over the past, give or take 5 years, has done, it has moved from a focus on skills and education, where you'd find that we were supporting NSFAS, we supported the second chance matric rewrite, we had our own bursary scheme called the Solomon Mahlangu Bursary Fund. We have now moved on over, because what you find is that there are custodians for that. You've got basic education for second chance matric, we have handed over to them. You've got higher education for tertiary studies and tuition. Those custodians have taken over those roles, and the NYDA has then pivoted and really looked at what the problem, or at least the issues that we need to address now are, which is youth unemployability and meaningful participation in the economy. So now we're looking at actually assisting youth-owned enterprises, looking at really trying to get money in the back pocket of young people, because that is what matters. And if we really think about it in rands and cents, the best way to alleviate the social grant system is to get young people active, is to get young people to become sustainable and actually be self-sufficient. So that's just one way in which we are trying to, at least our flagship program, that is one of them that we are really trying to make a success of with the budget that is available to us. So yeah, in a nutshell.
Thank you so much for that. I think that there are two things that I would like you to address or to comment on briefly, simultaneously. One is the work that you've been doing around Nelson Mandela Bay and the regions that you're in charge of. So if there are any sort of success stories, if there are any people, I know I'm one of the people that have benefited from the program and that have been boosted by the help of the NYDA. Secondly is the most important thing that I wanted you to address was the challenges of why applications for funding get rejected, So if you can advise the people that are watching and the people that are on this platform as to how can they equip themselves when they apply for anything, for NYDA, how can they better equip, or how can they better their applications so that they don't get rejected? What are the top things that cause applications to be rejected in your experience?
Okay, thanks a lot for that question. Always those questions. On the first point regarding some of the milestones that we've managed to achieve, I think notably it be the setting up of district centers. Look, if I were to go down the success stories of the NYDA, it becomes difficult because the question becomes, where do you start? There are many of them, and there's a sliding scale from small scale to large scale. For instance, you find the likes of yourselves and what you're doing within the metro. You find the likes of Uladuma Ngqolo with Maxhosa, and what he's doing there. We've also supported him. You look at people like Heavy K and in the music industry, what they've done. We've also supported Heavy K with some of his work or machines and equipment that he needed at the time. There's quite a number of them, Garoscapers, young people doing amazing things. And I think if you look at the Nelson Mandela Metro just on it as it is, at a social level, you've got a large class of Black young people that reside within townships, a small portion of them of Black middle class young people that reside within suburbs. You've got a massive amount of the colored population in your so-called northern areas that we also to make sure that we balance out and we're able to assist and reach out to all these interest groups. And then you've got the populations in your more affluent areas. And we have to be able to really ask ourselves, where are our priorities, and how to reach as many people as we can with the limited resources that we have. So it's always a balancing act, if I can call it that. And I think to your question about rejections, well, we prefer not to call them necessarily rejections. It's more of a matter of decline, right? At that particular point. I think it also attests to the fact that when you knocked on our doors, it was never a smooth process. You didn't come in there and get what you want first time around, you know, because ultimately every funder, and I think this is something that is also covered within our business training. So we've got a 5-day business management training. That's a mandatory, unless you've got a tertiary education or a tertiary qualification in entrepreneurship, BCom, etc. Right? This is where we speak about the agendas, the agenda of a funder. What is the agenda? So if you go to your ECDCs, their agenda is far different than ours. If you go to IDC, their agenda is different to ours. If you go to your 4 commercial banks and why they fund SMMEs, their agendas will be far different from ours. So our agenda certainly sort of stands out from most, and that is captured in the type of businesses that we look into, the type of businesses that we exclude. So just on the top of it, tobacco, alcohol, as primary income generators, we don't consider, you know. And sometimes we get into a tussle with young people about that. To say, but why? Because sometimes you find a young person may have a BSc and is perhaps manufacturing condoms for, you know, and then it becomes a bit of a tough situation. I'm talking about real situations here. There's a young person who approached us and is involved in brewing craft beer. Tough situation. I mean, that's a huge market, right? And we couldn't assist him at the time. But there's an upside to that, because every single year we review the grant program and we ask ourselves seeking questions to say, if we're not going to involve ourselves in sectors that are productive, such as craft beer, then are we doing justice to young entrepreneurs, especially those who are skilled in that sector? So those are ongoing conversations that I'm quite confident that we will win. But it's always a collective decision. It's always going to take time, and perhaps it will happen once I've left. Who knows? But that discussion is underway. And the challenges, Mr. Joka, I must admit to you. Oh, where do I start? On this one, let me address the issue of the 3 funds that we've been running over the past 3 months, right? During lockdown, we had the Relief Fund. The Relief Fund was a limited time opportunity for youth-owned enterprises to apply for business support would see them through the lockdown. What happened is that our communication was we will fund or support young entrepreneurs with funding for rental, for municipal bills, for the telephone lines, for internet, right? For salaries. And that's where it ended. Now, a young person coming into the NYDA, knowing it for what it is, would perhaps confuse the Relief Fund for the grant program. And I think that's where a lot of confusion came in. We had a lot of applications, and the tragedy here was that you could only apply once for the Relief Fund. And that's where we missed each other quite badly with quite a few young people who came to us. There was an understanding and an assumption that the grant program is the Relief Fund, just at a smaller scale, because the Relief Fund was kept at 10,000 rand. And that was just to see the youth-owned enterprise through, to just keep the lights on, literally, to keep the lights on, paying for municipal bills, paying for rental salaries, and just operational costs at that end, right? And so that was one of the challenges we had with the Relief Fund. Now, the documentation, most definitely, it's the run-of-the-mill issues. You've got your missing ID. Sometimes documents may not be certified. Sometimes application forms may not be filled in full. Now, these are ongoing issues that we do encounter, and I think it's something that we, in as much as it may be a daily occurrence, it is also something we need to really encourage our young youth-owned enterprises to look into, in applying our minds in what we're doing at that particular time. Now, a challenge for us when it came to the Relief Fund was the fact that the Relief Fund, number one, had never been run before. We were just running with our normal operations, and suddenly we found ourselves with the Relief Fund on our laps, right? Due to this COVID-19 situation. Now, similar to the TRS and the UIF issues, we had our own technical glitches from internally. I think primary to that would be our systems. We had to develop and set up systems in a 24-hour period, so 48 hours. We had to really just get things going. And that in itself was quite a challenge, because each branch had its own set of dynamics. But we managed to get that going. We managed to get that up and running with limited staff. I mean, COVID-19 affected everyone. And I think you'd even attest to this, that even your own operations, they're not running as they used to, or they did not, especially under level 4 and 5. So with us, we went from 100% capacity to 30%. We're all working from home, so documentation had to come through via email. Now, this presents a huge challenge to us, because the very young people that we assist are primarily, or at least our bias is towards township and rural youth. I'm sure you know that with the current setup in this country, when it comes to general access to internet and connectivity, young people residing in those areas are underserviced. So we'd receive an imbalance in the applications that we're getting against what we are looking for, at least the demographics that we're looking for. So those were some of the relating to the relief fund. Then we moved on to the 1,000 in 100, which is another campaign run by the presidency. I'll touch on it in my small presentation, where it is a grant program. However, it's far quicker, if I can put it that way. Our president, his office wanted to fund 1,000 youth-owned enterprises in 100 days, and so under the pump, the pressure was on. We got that. We had a target of 15. We managed to meet that target as a branch. Again, this happened under COVID-19 as well. So we had 3 and the grant program within the same period. So it was the relief fund, the 1,000 and 100, as well as the grant program that's currently run now. The biggest challenge, again, has been internal processes in terms of capacity, and then met by external challenges in terms of the use of technology that suddenly fell on our laps. Looking at the type of, you see, the NYDA, especially at a service delivery level, is primarily based on face-to-face interaction. And that's our modus operandi. We try by all means to reach. This is why we've got district centers, one in South Apartment, one in Chris Hani, to bring services to where they are needed. So Chris Hani area is Queenstown. South Apartment area, it's actually located in Emnyameni, which is Alexandria, closer to Port Alfred. We're trying to reach as many young people, especially in underserved areas. Now, the flip side to this was the question of, do these young people that we're trying to reach in this current time of COVID-19 have access to the internet connectivity and just access to the facilities to actually engage with us? And that was one of the biggest concerns and challenges for us.
Thank you for that, Mr. Zondani. There are a couple of questions that are coming in from the people that are joining us.
Sure.
But before I get to those questions, I mean, we've had about 10 people who've joined us whilst you were speaking. So I'd like to just take it back a bit. And I know at the beginning you started by addressing the question of exactly what the NYDA does. If we were to dumb it down, because I want us to make it simpler if we can. What services can we expect from the NYDA? I know at a time I was a bit confused too, because there were people who were saying it's only for existing businesses, and then there are people who are saying it's for businesses, it's for people that have ideas, and then at a later stage, I also got, as an existing business, I got assistance. I don't know if it was a grant or something like that, but it was something that helped me with my accounting, you know?
Sure.
So if we were to bring it to a simple layman, because I know that there are people who are watching this on Facebook, some of them are from Middleburg Cape, and there are people I've been talking to them about NYDA, but to this day, some of them still don't understand what the NYDA does, how they can get assistance, when they can apply, because there's a question that just came in that says, are applications still available for 2020? I think these are painful questions, because to me, there is a disconnect between the knowledge flow in terms of when people can apply, what the NYDA does, and the intended audience and the people that ought to get the assistance that they need. So I don't know if I'm making sense, but if you were to dumb it down, make it simpler, Uibale 1, 2, 3, 4. What are those services that young people who have businesses, who don't have businesses, can expect to get NYDA?
All right, so I'll bring it down to one major thing under one umbrella, right? That's economic participation. So we want young people to participate meaningfully in the economy through 3 streams, right? Number one would be through access to higher education via NSFAS. We've got a partnership with NSFAS that will be actually starting as soon as tomorrow, where we're going to be interviewing people, getting on board. Young people can come walk into our doors, pick up an application, fill it in, and drop it off with us, and we then capture that information and send it to NSFAS. This assists in one thing, so that if a person applies for NSFAS through the NYDA, it's a decline from NSFAS because of missing ID, because we can sort that out at the branch. You don't get a decline because of there's no signature on one of your consent forms. We can sort that out at the branch. So that's one thing. The second one is through jobs, right? We're trying to get young people into employment opportunities, and we've got a dedicated jobs officer. So this is the second point. The dedicated jobs officer links young people literally by himself. He links young people to work opportunities that exist within the Metro and the Eastern Cape. So we work with all our other offices, East London as well as Mthatha. And then the third one would be our flagship program. This is the one we lead with. We lead with business support. Now, when I mention business support, I mean non-financial. Non-financial is exactly what you mentioned, the voucher program, where we can assist you with marketing material, we can assist you with business strategy, we can assist you with business plan, we can assist you with bookkeeping services and getting your financials in. So this is for young entrepreneurs. Our non-financial component is comprised of vouchers that enable us to link a young person with a service provider who can provide or give them this product or service free of charge. We pay the service provider. The non-financial part. The financial part that quite a few, and also the non-financial part would be the training that we provide, 5 days accredited training, which is called BMT, on the 5th day or the following Monday, so to speak, pitch for your idea and you get a certificate from us. So that's the last point. Within that point is the actual financial assistance through the grant program, which a lot of young people are quite accustomed to or know about. Here, we provide financial assistance, right? Purchasing stock, equipment, paying for rent, paying for renovations, assisting with co-funding. If you come with a funder to us and you ask us to meet you rand for rand, depending on the amount that you need and the viability of the business, and also the business model that you providing to us, we can meet that funder rand for rand and provide you with co-funding there as well. So the grant program is linked towards the purchase of stock, equipment, raw material, payment of salaries, and rent for youth-owned enterprises. This is basically to get them off the ground, because ultimately, if you look at it, it's the threshold 1 is 1 to 10,000 rand, threshold 2 is 10 to 50,000 rand, threshold 3 is 50 to 100,000 rand, and then the 4th threshold is up to 250,000 rand, depending on the business viability, the skill of the youth-owned enterprise, or at least the entrepreneur himself and his or her experience. So that would be the financial aspect to our support. So this is approximately 3 things: jobs. It is assisting young people to get into varsity if they want to further their studies through NSFAS. That's one partnership. And then our mainstay, our core business, if I can call it that, our flagship program, business support through non-financial training, comprising of training, non-financial support comprising of training and business vouchers, and then financial support, which comprises of grant funding, that is a direct injection into the business. We also provide with the grant program, we also provide financial assistance through working capital. So if a young person needs about 5,000, 10,000 rand to just get the business off the ground, we can assist them with that. So that I would say in a nutshell, in 3 service offerings is what we offer when we come into contact with the on the street.
Great, great. There are so many questions that are coming in. And
yeah.
I know that we only have just about 20 minutes left for our conversation. For those of you who are joining us, we are just chatting with Mr. ZONDANI, who's the regional manager of the NYDA. And the purpose of this conversation is to inform and educate people about the mandate of the NYDA, how people can get assistance from the NYDA. So one question that is consistently coming in is around the isikalo. And maybe before you say something about that, I would like to say that I have invited the officials from the Department of Economic Development that are actually in charge of the program of isikalo for a session. I'm still waiting for them, for their response, so that they can also
a product that is unique,
themselves.
Not familiar in our economy, but still is mostly needed.
Okay, colleagues, I'm just going to ask you
How
to
go about to get assistance from NYDA.
Okay, I'm just going to ask you to mute your mics, and then you just write your questions there at the chat so that we can address them. Just mute your mics and then write your questions there. Mr. Zondani, do you have anything to tell us or to share regarding isikalo?
Iziko Youth Fund, thanks a lot, Mr. Iziko Youth Fund was a 3-way partnership between the Department of, like you mentioned, Economic Development, the Office of the Custodian, as well as the NYDA. The NYDA was positioned as the implementing arm or facilitator of the program. So remember, the NYDA has 17 branches across the country and has an office in each district across the country. So we were well positioned to actually facilitate this program. The custodian, once again, was the Office of the Premier, and the administrator would be the Department of Economic Development, which is why it is important that we do have them, in this part of this discussion, because ultimately the support that we lended to the Iziko Youth Fund was that of number one, awareness, creating the awareness among young people. Secondly, getting young people to understand how it works. The unfortunate bit was that part of our MOU in this 3-way partnership was that we were just involved, or at least in charge of that element, not necessarily the payments, the due diligence, or the financial runnings of the fund. And so that, in short, where the NYDA sort of features in it. We have received, I remember just before lockdown, went through to the department about 62 applications for consideration. And per quarter, we'd get a feedback of how far we've gone as a province. Now remember, it was a provincial fund, so it was based within the Eastern Cape. It was 4 youth-owned enterprises operating and residing within the Eastern Cape. It's just a matter of our limitations within the scope of the agreement to really guide what our role was. Our role was the facilitation and raising awareness and just acting as an access point, similar to the NSFAS. We don't administer the NSFAS, or we don't pay out NSFAS funding. We simply facilitate the influx of young people coming in, accessing application forms, getting a clear understanding of what it is they need to have in their application packs, and ensuring that it is accurately captured. The assessment and due diligence, as well as what the core functions will be done by the custodian, which would be, in this case, Department of Economic Development.
Excellent. And again, just to reiterate what I said, we will hopefully, if they respond or when they respond, we will get them to maybe come and share a few things around exactly what they do and how they can assist young people. I think one final question before I maybe also go to the floor. Do you have any advice for people that are watching? I know that there are so many questions that are coming through Facebook as well. And it's basically people that are asking questions that you've already attended to. So I'm going to ask those people to maybe watch this again. But is there any advice that you have for someone or some mother who wants to start a business but who doesn't know what the next step is? Maybe that person doesn't even have the money to come to your offices. They don't have the resources to go on the internet and do research or draft a business plan. What can you say to those people that are not necessarily as privileged as we are, will not access this, that are not watching this? What advice can you give those people?
Okay, so number one, for that primary example, I would make a plea with that young person to contact their ward councillor. We've got a working relationship with all ward councillors within the metro as a point of referral, because we understand that we can't be everywhere at the same time. I would also make a plea, if possible, for them to pay a visit to the business center in Motherwell Shopping Center. That's where there are facilities for them to actually get in contact with us. We've got a working relationship there with the municipality as well, to basically see what we can assist them with. Now, remember, young people come to us with an array of issues, ranging from business registrations to just starting up a business, like you mentioned. So that advice can be done quite seamlessly in that sense. And we can see how we can attend to them. But ultimately, and like I mentioned, the way we actually assist youth-owned enterprises, or at least young people in general, is through face-to-face interactions, which have been hindered through the restrictions of COVID-19. However, I always make it a point to share, it's even on my Facebook page, I always make it a point to share my contact details there. My email is right there. I respond instantly to that. If anyone wants to get into contact with me, they can find me on sabulela.zondani@nyda.gov.za. That's if they've got the facilities. If they don't have the facilities, please approach the councillor. All ward councillors have the contact details of the NYDA PE branch. I've made a point of that over the past 3 years. Contact them. They will contact me and we will set something up. That is something that can be done, because we, like you mentioned, the metro is scattered in such a way that if an office that resides within Governor Beki stays there, it can't really reach everyone else. So through their ward councils, they'll be able to get hold of me. And if they really want to get this started, it's also in my presentation. If I was going to run through it, I'll just leave it with you. I suppose you don't have time. They can also jump onto bizportal.gov.za. Bizportal.gov.za has 4 offerings: business registration, the setting up of a business bank account. You've got SARS clearance certificate that you can get there, as well as getting your own UIF set up as well. So there's a critical point where a young person can jump onto that email address or jump onto that site and get all 4 of those services to them. If the young person wants to actually speak with us and get a sense of what we can do for them, what we can offer, or get advice from us, then definitely please approach your local councillor.
Excellent, Buti. Thank you so much for that. Colleagues, I do apologize. There's so many questions that came in and we couldn't deal with all of them because of limited time. I think there are 1 or 2 in closing that I'd just like to read out, and there's still people joining. There are 1 or 2 questions. I just want to ask for any recommendations. A lot of the time, people have, we've been dealing with so many questions now. Are there any recommendations, if the people that are joining us can maybe give us any sort of advice or recommendations from the other end of the people that are receiving the services? For instance, for me, it would be that at times, but I don't know how the process works. At times, I feel that the people that are sitting in the in the committees that decide, you know, who gets the funding or who doesn't, from a person who's looking from the outside in, it always feels like these are people that don't have the experience of running businesses. You know, in the sense that there would some, I remember with, you know, I'm grateful for my application. I applied for items that were worth a certain amount, and it was, I almost received half of that amount. And the reason was because the other items I needed were not necessarily essential items. And maybe the rationale there is that the financing must be stretched and everyone must receive the funding. You know, so just as a comment from someone who's looking from the outside in, sometimes it feels as if the people, I don't know who they are, that are sitting in the committees, and it goes to all of the other government agencies as well. I can say the same about ZIDA,
Yes.
CDC. It's usually people that are not entrepreneurs, that are not necessarily akin with entrepreneurship. I don't know if I'm correct. I don't know if I'm wrong.
Yeah.
Maybe this is not the platform for you to comment on it.
Sure, sure. Well, I can't say if you're right or wrong because entrepreneurs don't want my job. So it's a catch-22, you know what I mean? So it's a tough one. You guys don't want my job. It's difficult to answer.
Sandile Mjamba is just saying there, let's create more platforms like this and invite the NYDA and other funding institutions. Great, Mr. Mjamba, that's what we're trying to do. And Usanga Mtia is saying there, is the training granted in this pandemic? So are people still getting training? Just one or two questions as we are wrapping up. And someone else, Mr. Bong, is asking, what is your turnaround strategy for approval of funding? What are your requirements for the grant funding? Maybe you can just touch briefly around that. There was one more question from Ulunga, gentleman who's joining us from Whittlesea, Mr. Lungam Jodo. And his question is, what are the issues they consider when assessing your applications for funding? So what are those? I know maybe you might have dealt with some of these things, but there are people who are still joining us even now. So
yes.
Can you just maybe briefly those brief questions?
Yeah. So to the first question, is business training still a requisite for funding? Right now, it is not necessarily. However, you need to prove operations. So you either are registered and have been operating for some time. I mean, it may even be a month, 2 months, even 3 months, right? Or you are not registered but have been operating for plus minus 3 to 6 months. That's what we consider as someone who is exposed to business, and we may waiver the training because remember, we can't gather in large groups. On the matter of criteria, so what do you need to apply for the grant program within the NYDA, or just business support? You need to be under the age of 35. You need to be a South African citizen, right? And you need to be operating a business within the borders of South Africa. Have a viable business plan, a business idea or actual plan, right? And just make sure it's legal, man. That's what we're basically. Yeah, it's just nothing. It's not that hectic of a process. It's and I think you'd attest to this. When we engage with a youth-owned enterprise, we assess it on its merits. We don't have a yardstick or a approach. Yeah. So we call you, we speak to you, we call you into the branch, we speak to you one-on-one. We try to get an idea of the business itself, and we try to get a good, clear insight of the entrepreneur and whether or not they can deliver on what they're promising. I just forgot the last one. The last question.
I also.
If you still have it, yeah. I think it was about the term strategy for, I forgot it, it's my mind, but it was about strategy. Yeah.
Maybe in closing, if you can deal with these two questions. I know that I've been using for some time.
No, it's fine. I mean, I was hoping we'd actually interact for far longer than this.
In closing, service providers. So what's happening? What is the process? I know that there are people here who own businesses that would like to be service providers. and that would like to, interact or provide some sort of help to the businesses that are being serviced by NYDA. What's the process? What's happening there? Because at times it feels like it's a monopolized space. There are few people who are doing the same things over and over again. So what's the process? What's happening there? And there's one question that is coming in from Uno Sisapin, I think she's in Johannesburg, and she's asking, does the NYDA fund non-profit organizations? And also, do they have any expectations such as paying back the money? So they don't. I can answer her and say they don't, but you can also maybe or attest to that. And the last question there is your personal financial or credit status considered in the process? I think that's a very important one. So in closing, I don't, if I've missed your question, I do apologize, but these are the questions that I see that are coming in. Mr. C.
Okay, so it was NPO, credit. I just want to capture the last one.
Service
the first SPs, okay. So, okay, let me start with service providers. Service providers, all service providers, guys, please jump onto the website. You'll find on the far right-hand side, you've got supply chain management, and then look at active tenders. You'll see exactly what we have to offer over and above the business support that we have to offer. So what service providers on our books for business support and mentorship coaching, all vouchers are 3-year contracts. I think as far as I can remember, we should be on our 2nd, if not 3rd year now. So those contracts are not yet over. So we're not going to advertise soon, but keep an eye on our active tenders for any other services that or commodities that a young person or young entrepreneur may possess within their businesses, right? So that's just on the service providers element. Please keep an eye on that because it's always quite dynamic. It's there's a lot happening there. Because for instance, now we're looking at offering our services, looking at going digital and going online with business management training. So there are things to look forward to there, right? So keep an eye on that. On credit, yes, we do look at your credit. However, it's not an elimination round type situation. The question we ask ourselves, number one, do you have a finding there or do you have a judgment? If there is a judgment there, do you have an arrangement in place? If you don't, please get that done and come back to us. So we need a letter from your creditor indicating that you've made an arrangement with them, and then we'll start engaging you and speaking to that, right? So it's not an exclusive type of situation we try to get people off. NPOs, unfortunately, we don't fund NPOs primarily because there is a budget set aside for that with social development, right? So approach your Department of Social Development for registration, setting up of as well as funding of NPOs. There is a budget set up there that's far larger than ours. If I had to actually make that known, but please consider approaching them there. Our consideration is PTY Ltd. So we're looking at youth-owned enterprises with a motive of profit. That's who we look for when it comes to business support.
I think you've captured all of those questions. Colleagues, thank you so much for joining us. Mr. Zondani, thank you so much for your time. This was just a very brief session that we wanted to have, just so that we can tell people that there is something that the government is doing. A lot of times people get into this mode of complaining, and in complaining, they disregard in totality the chances and the opportunities that are out there. And I can attest and say, I've been one of those people who have been assisted and by the NYDA. And from that assistance, I managed to pin down a book from the very laptop that I got from the NYDA. So so I want to encourage all of you who are watching this from all of these small towns to get in touch with your ward councillors, to email Mr. Zondani, to call. I don't know if your lines are still working or if people can just call. But I just want to encourage you.
Yes, we're back in office. Yeah.
In closing, from my side, I think that people, they lose.
Mr. Zondani, please leave his email address and his contact details.
Okay, we'll do that. In closing, I feel that people lose hope very easily. They just get discouraged very, very easily. So I would encourage you, us all, when we're dealing with such government agencies, singapheli mandla ku-early. Let's continue. Let's knock on those doors. Mr. Zondani, there's a request that you please leave your contact details so that people can engage with you after this or tomorrow sometime. All in all, I just want to say thank you to all of you who've tuned in. I want to say thank you to Mr. Sia Zondani. We will be talking to other people. We'll be talking to the ECDC, we'll be talking to SETA, we'll be talking to people from Isikalo, and I'll be bringing on board friends of mine who are in the private space, who are into venture capital, to maybe also explain, if you don't want government funding, is there a room and space for you to get funding from private investors? So I've got friends of mine who are going to be talking about that. So I do encourage you to just keep on watching and keep following. Mr. Sia, thank you so much.
Mr. Joka, yes.
Thank you for your time. Siyabulela kakhulu. Good night, colleagues, until we meet again. As a thank you, I'm going to bring you something when the thing is on level 1. I'll bring you.
I'll hold you to that.
But
thanks a lot, Mr. Joka. Thank you, sir.